Leaders in the field of gene editing have collectively agreed it's too early to implant edited embryos in humans because of the risks, the unknowns, and the ethical questions about altering humankind.
When identical black twin sisters born and raised together decided to take a simple DNA test out of curiosity, they never imagined it would unravel a secret buried for decades. But when the doctor reviewed their results, his face went pale and his next words sent chills down their spines. "You need to get a lawyer. Now." What the test revealed was something no one could have predicted. A shocking truth that questioned everything they thought they knew about their family, their past, and even their very identities. This is the unbelievable story of the twins' DNA test gone terribly wrong. The bond of the twins. Everyone in the neighborhood knew the Anderson twins. From the way they finished each other's sentences to how they laughed at the same jokes, they seemed more like mirrors than siblings. They dressed alike, shared the same dreams, and even had matching birthmarks just under their left shoulders. To everyone, they were one soul split into two bodies. Growing up, they were impossible to separate. They went to the same school, sat together in class, and protected each other like soldiers on the same mission. If one got into trouble, the other was never far behind. Their mother often said, "You can't find one without the other." And it was true. Their bond felt stronger than blood itself. Life moved easily for them. They finished college, found jobs in the same city, and even rented apartments on the same street. Friends teased them for being too identical. Sometimes strangers couldn't tell them apart, which they found amusing. They took pride in being twins, a shared identity they believed nothing could break. It all began as a small idea during a family dinner. Their cousin had recently taken a DNA test and discovered distant relatives in another country. Excited by the story, one of the twins said, "We should do it too. Let's see where our roots really come from." The other laughed, agreeing right away. To them, it was just another adventure, a chance to learn more about their ancestors, maybe find a few surprises in their family tree. A week later, they visited a new DNA testing clinic downtown. The building looked modern, filled with white walls and glass doors. A friendly doctor greeted them, explaining how the test worked. He handed them each a small kit and told them to swab the inside of their cheeks. "You'll get the results in 2 weeks," he said with a smile. The twins joked about it on their way out, making bets on who would have more royal blood. The first week passed quickly. They forgot about the test, busy with work and life. But by the second week, one of them received a call from the clinic. The doctor's tone was different, tense, hurried. He asked them to come in together, saying only that there was something important to discuss in person. When they arrived, the air in the small office felt heavy. The doctor didn't greet them with his usual warmth. Instead, he avoided their eyes and shuffled through papers on his desk. Finally, he looked up, his expression pale. "I've double-checked your results," he said slowly. "Something's not right here." The twins exchanged confused looks. "What do you mean?" one asked. The doctor hesitated before leaning closer. His voice dropped to a whisper, trembling slightly. "Before I show you this, you might want to get legal advice. I think you'll need a lawyer." For the first time in their lives, the twins looked at each other and didn't see certainty, only fear. The test that changed everything. The twins sat frozen as the doctor slid 2 envelopes across the table. The room felt too quiet, the air thick with tension. The sound of the paper tearing seemed louder than their breathing. They had expected to see identical results, same ancestry, same DNA markers, same everything. But what appeared on the page made no sense. The first report showed African and Caribbean ancestry, just as they had expected. The second, however, revealed something different, European, Asian, and barely any match to the first twin. The lines that were supposed to align didn't. The doctor looked up, his expression unreadable. "I checked the samples 3 times, he said quietly. "Then I sent them to a separate lab to confirm. The results are accurate." The twins looked at each other, confusion turning to disbelief. "There's no way," one of them said. "We're twins. We were born minutes apart." "I know," the doctor replied, rubbing his forehead. "But according to these results, you share no DNA, not even the amount found in distant relatives." For a moment, nobody spoke. The doctor's voice grew low, almost hesitant. "This isn't just a lab mix-up. One of these results doesn't even match your mother's genetic profile on record." That sentence hung in the air like a ghost. One twin's face turned pale. "Are you saying one of us isn't her child?" The doctor sighed. "I can't say for certain yet, but something about your birth records and your genetic data doesn't match. I'd advise you to get a lawyer before speaking to anyone else about this." The twins left the clinic in silence, each lost in a storm of questions. Their childhood memories replayed in their minds: birthdays, family trips, their mother's laughter. None of it made sense now. How could everything they believed be wrong? That night, neither of them slept. Every sound in the house felt louder, every thought sharper. What if they weren't really twins? What if one of them didn't belong to their family at all? The next morning, they decided to confront their mother. They needed answers, and only she could give them. As they prepared to leave, one twin noticed something strange: a sealed envelope sitting by the door. It had no return address, only their names written in neat handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It wasn't from the clinic. It was from someone who knew more. The note read, "Stop digging." The truth was buried for a reason. They looked at each other, fear spreading fast. The test hadn't just revealed a mistake. It had opened a door someone desperately wanted to keep closed. The twins had started with a simple question about their roots. Now someone was warning them not to find the answer. The shocking discovery. The note lay between them like a warning neither wanted to touch. The handwriting was neat, almost careful, but the message carried a chill that went straight to their bones. Stop digging. The truth was buried for a reason. Who could have known about the test? They hadn't told anyone, not even friends. That morning, they drove to their mother's house. Inside, the twins placed the DNA results on the table. Their mother stared at the papers, her hands trembling. Her lips moved, but no words came out. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "That's not possible. You're both my children." One twin leaned forward. "Mom, they said one of us doesn't match you." "Not even a little. How is that possible?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know. You were both born on the same night, in the same hospital. I held you both." Silence filled the room. The ticking clock on the wall sounded like thunder. Finally, their mother stood up and walked to an old wooden cabinet. From a locked drawer, she pulled out a faded hospital envelope. Inside were copies of their birth records. Same date, same doctor, same ward. But as they looked closer, one thing stood out. The wristband numbers were different. One had been crossed out and rewritten in pen. Their mother frowned. "That can't be right. The nurse told me they had to change the band because one of you was crying nonstop and they switched your blankets." "Who was the nurse?" one twin asked. She hesitated. "I think her name was Carla." "Yes, Nurse Carla. She worked the night shift." A quick search online revealed something unsettling. There was no record of any Nurse Carla at the hospital that year. In fact, the hospital's staff list for that period was incomplete. Files were missing. Later that day, they returned to the clinic, demanding answers. The doctor looked uneasy when they mentioned the nurse's name. "That's impossible," he said. "Carla wasn't a nurse. She was an assistant who was fired years ago after a patient complaint. But her name appears in several birth records that were later sealed." When they asked why they were sealed, the doctor's face hardened. Because those births were part of an internal investigation. There were claims of switched infants, and even rumors of illegal adoption deals. The words hit like a hammer. Switched infants. Illegal adoptions. Suddenly, the warning note made sense. Someone knew the truth and wanted it buried forever. That night, the twins sat in the dark, staring at the envelope again. One of them whispered, "If one of us doesn't belong, where is the other child?" The question lingered like smoke, heavy, unanswerable. But deep down, both knew this was only the beginning. The next step wasn't just about finding answers, it was about uncovering a crime that someone had spent decades trying to hide. Searching for truth. The next morning began with silence. The twins barely spoke as they sipped their coffee, their eyes hollow from another sleepless night. The truth was no longer a theory. It was a wound opening wider with every new detail. Someone had lied to them, and it had started the day they were born. They decided to visit the hospital where it all began. The building had changed over the years, new walls, new faces, but something about it still felt heavy, as if the walls carried secrets no one wanted to remember. At the reception desk, they asked for access to their birth records. The clerk smiled politely until she saw the year they mentioned. Her face turned uneasy. "I'm sorry," she said. "Those records aren't available." That section of our archives was damaged in a fire about 15 years ago. "A fire?" one twin asked, suspicion rising. "Every record from that year?" She hesitated. "Almost all." They thanked her and left, but their instincts told them something wasn't right. On their way out, an older woman sweeping the corridor called out softly, "You're not the first to come asking about that year." They stopped. The woman introduced herself as Grace, a retired nurse who now volunteered at the hospital. She lowered her voice. "There was no fire. They said that to cover up what happened. There were whispers about babies being switched for money. I never believed it, but after a while, people stopped asking questions." The twins exchanged glances, confirmation of their worst fear. Grace gave them a name before leaving. "If you want real answers, talk to Dr. Levin. He worked here during that time. He left after the investigation started." That evening, they found Dr. Levin's address in an old directory. He lived on the edge of town, in a quiet house that looked almost abandoned. When he opened the door, his eyes widened in recognition. "You're the Anderson twins," he said softly. "I knew this day would come." Inside, the house was filled with stacks of papers and faded photographs. Dr. Levin's hands shook as he poured them tea. "I can't say much," he began, "but I'll tell you this. There were irregularities in the maternity ward that year. Babies misplaced, tags swapped, sometimes intentionally. A few of us tried to expose it, but the hospital board buried the reports. Then, people started disappearing." He nodded. Nurse Carla was one of them. After the investigation began, she vanished. Some said she fled overseas. Others said she was silenced. Before they left, Dr. Levin handed them a folder wrapped in brown paper. "Be careful," he said. "What's inside will tell you where to look next. But once you open it, there's no going back." That night, back home, they placed the folder on the table. Neither reached for it at first. The air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. Finally, one of them whispered, "If this is about who we really are, we have to know." They opened the folder, and what they found inside made their blood run cold. A single photograph, 2 newborns in identical blankets. But the tag on one wrist read a name they had never seen before. The hidden file. The twins sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by piles of old documents and unanswered questions. The DNA results had shattered everything they knew. One of them didn't belong to the family she grew up with. But how could that be? There had to be a record somewhere, something that explained the impossible. They decided to return to the hospital where they were born. The building looked smaller now, stripped of its warmth, its walls lined with the ghosts of the past. A polite receptionist told them their birth files were archived decades ago and no longer accessible. But the twins weren't giving up. They searched for anyone who might remember that night. After hours of waiting, an older janitor approached them quietly. "You're looking for old delivery records?" he asked. "You should talk to the woman in records, Miss Harper." She's been here since before most of us were born. Miss Harper was cautious at first. Those files are sealed for a reason, she said, glancing over her shoulder. But when the twins showed her the DNA results, something changed in her eyes. With a shaky breath, she led them down a narrow hallway to a locked storage room. Dust hung in the air as she opened the door. This section was supposed to be cleared out years ago, she whispered. But some files never got destroyed. They spent hours digging through boxes, reading faded labels and yellowed papers. Then one of them found it, a folder marked Marley Case, Confidential. Inside were 2 birth certificates, both dated the same day, both signed by the same doctor, Dr. Marcus Hale. One certificate had been crossed out and replaced with another baby's name. The twins exchanged a look of disbelief. "He switched us," one whispered. "He changed everything." Miss Harper backed away slowly. "You didn't hear this from me," she murmured. "Dr. Hale left years ago. No one knows where he went. But when he disappeared, so did a lot of files." They left the hospital shaken, clutching the stolen folder. Outside, the evening sky burned orange, and for the first time, the world felt dangerous. As they walked to the car, one twin noticed something strange. A black sedan parked across the street, engine running, headlights off. When they looked again, it was gone. That night, a new fear settled in. They weren't just uncovering a secret. Someone else already knew what they'd found. They were just about to find out who it was. The real parents. The letter came in a plain white envelope. No logo, no warning, just a name, an address, and a trembling sense of finality. The DNA search had traced one twin's biological family to a quiet suburb 2 hours away. They sat in silence on the drive there, the sound of the road filling what words couldn't. The house was nothing like what they grew up in. A manicured lawn, wind chimes, and a polished car in the driveway. Signs of a comfortable life. When the door opened, a woman stood frozen. She had the same eyes as one of the twins. For a moment, no one spoke. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "I've seen that face before, in my dreams." Tears blurred the moment that followed. The woman, her biological mother, reached out slowly, as though afraid the vision would vanish. They embraced, unsure if it was right, but needing to feel something real. Inside, the family gathered, curious and hesitant. Photographs lined the walls. Birthdays, graduations, smiles that now seemed to belong to another version of life that could have been. The twin looked around and felt a strange duality, familiar yet foreign. So this was supposed to be my home? The question hung heavy. The other twin stood nearby, watching the reunion unfold, heart torn between joy and loss. It wasn't jealousy, it was the ache of seeing destiny rewritten before their eyes. Later, over tea that had gone cold, the truth spilled in fragments. The hospital, the confusion, the swap. The biological parents had been told their baby hadn't survived birth. They'd mourned a lie for over 2 decades. Outside, as the day dimmed, the twins sat on the porch with their newfound mother. The sky turned orange, a fading light between 2 lives. "You didn't lose me," they said quietly. "We both lost time." The woman nodded, tears silent, her hand clutching theirs as if to make up for all the years apart. When the twins finally drove back home, the silence returned, but it was heavier this time. One of them looked out the window and whispered, "Who am I, really?" The other didn't answer. Some truths didn't need words, only the courage to live with them, and they were about to fight for the truth. The legal battle begins. The morning after the revelation, the twins sat in silence, their world split in 2. One of them had been stolen at birth, sold, switched, and raised under another name. The laughter they once shared now felt like a fragile bridge between 2 different lives. But beneath the shock was something stronger: anger. By noon, They were sitting in a lawyer's office, clutching the DNA results and hospital documents. The lawyer, Valerie Kent, was calm but sharp. She had seen medical scandals before, but never something like this. She flipped through the papers slowly, her expression hardening with every page. "This isn't a clerical mistake," she said. "It's a cover-up. Someone made sure these records disappeared, and someone paid for it." Her words hung heavy in the air. The twins exchanged a glance, a silent agreement forming between them. They would not be silent. Valerie filed a legal motion to unseal the hospital's archives. The hospital responded fast, denying everything. They claimed the records were misplaced and accused the twins of spreading false information. But Valerie was relentless. She tracked down former employees, requested court orders, and gathered fragments of truth wherever she could find them. Then, a breakthrough, an aging nurse named Grace came forward. She remembered the night 2 babies were born, one of them taken away before morning. "Dr. Hale handled it himself," she said, voice trembling. "He said it was an adoption, but the mother never signed any papers." Valerie built her case around Grace's testimony and the DNA proof. Soon, the story broke in the media. Twins' DNA test exposes hidden hospital scandal. The hospital's lawyers tried to settle quickly, offering money to keep the story quiet. The twins refused. They didn't want compensation. They wanted truth. When the case went to court, tension filled the room. Valerie stood firm as witnesses spoke of missing infants and destroyed files. The twins watched in silence, their hands clasped tightly under the table. By the end of the day, the judge ordered a full investigation into Dr. Hale's actions. It was a small victory, but it came with a chilling warning. That night, a plain envelope was slipped under their door. Inside was a note typed in block letters. "You're getting too close. Stop now." The warning wasn't just meant to scare them. It was the beginning of something darker, something that would soon turn their search for truth into a fight for survival. The courtroom revelation. The courtroom was packed. Cameras flashed outside, reporters filled the aisles, and every whisper carried the same question: who was behind the stolen baby scandal? The twins sat side by side, their faces pale but steady. They had come for answers, no matter the cost. Valerie Kent, their lawyer, stood before the judge with a stack of evidence. The hospital's attorneys argued loudly, claiming there was no proof, that everything was a misunderstanding from decades ago. But Valerie wasn't moved. She waited for silence, then opened a file labeled Witness Statement, Grace M. The room hushed. Before she disappeared, Valerie said, "Grace gave us these notes." She laid them out on the table, pages filled with dates, signatures, and coded initials. At the bottom of every page appeared the same name, Dr. Marcus Hale. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The hospital's lawyers tried to object, but the judge allowed it. Valerie continued, her voice steady. "These records show payments made to private parties during hospital shifts, and every transfer followed a birth." Then came the turning point. A video call connected to the courtroom's screen. On it appeared an older man, nervous, tired, and ready to speak. "My name is Thomas Reed," he began. "I worked under Dr. Hale. What he did wasn't adoption. It was trafficking. Babies were taken, papers changed, and money exchanged. I stayed silent for too long." Gasps filled the room. One of the twins covered her mouth, trembling. Reed continued, explaining how Hale used fake medical complications to justify removing infants from their mothers. Reed whispered, "He said he was saving them, but he was selling them." Valerie presented a final piece of evidence, a photograph of the twins as newborns, with Hale's initials written on the back. "This," she said, "was the night it began." The judge sat back, eyes dark with disbelief. He said slowly, "This case is no longer about one family. It's about a system that failed them all." The twins felt both vindicated and hollow. They had exposed the truth, but it had come at a cost. That night, as they returned home, another envelope waited at their door. Inside was a photograph of Grace, alive, but bound in a dark room, and beneath it, a message. You should have stopped when you could. The courtroom had given them truth, but now they would have to fight to stay alive long enough to finish the story. The price of truth. The photograph of Grace changed everything. It wasn't just a threat, it was proof that someone still controlled the story. The twins sat in shock, staring at the image of the woman who had risked everything to help them. Her eyes were filled with fear, and behind her, the room was dark and unfamiliar. Valerie Kent arrived moments later, her face pale. She studied the note in silence before whispering, "They're watching us. Whoever sent this knows exactly where you are." Fear settled over them like a heavy fog. Every sound outside the window made them flinch. Every shadow felt like someone waiting, but Valerie refused to let them hide. "If you vanish," she said firmly, "they win. We'll bring this into the open. The press will protect you better than the police ever could." Within hours, the story exploded across national headlines. DNA twins' case takes a dark turn. Witness missing. Threats sent. Public outrage followed. Investigators reopened old files, and the hospital's board members scrambled for cover. Still, Grace's whereabouts remained unknown. Then one night, Valerie received a strange email. No subject, no sender, only a set of GPS coordinates and the words, "He's still here." The address led to an abandoned research facility once owned by the same hospital at the heart of the scandal. Valerie went there with 2 detectives. The place was silent, dust thick on the floors. In a locked basement office, they found what the twins had been searching for. Boxes of original hospital files, all stamped with Dr. Hale's signature. Inside those files were photographs, falsified adoption records, and ledgers showing cash transfers to private accounts. It was irrefutable proof of a black market baby operation, one that had gone on for years. Valerie sent copies to the authorities that night, but by morning, she was gone. Her phone was dead. Her car, later found near the coast, was empty. The twins were terrified. But they knew one thing: the truth was still out there. And now it was their turn to finish what Valerie started. They looked again at Grace's photograph, then at each other. "We can't stop," one said quietly. The other nodded. "Not until he's found." And as the sun rose over the coast, an email arrived in their inbox, a short message from an unknown sender. "If you want to find him, come alone." The final confrontation. The twins stood at the edge of the old coastal road, wind whipping through their hair. The ocean stretched endlessly ahead, dark and restless. Somewhere beyond the cliffs, they believed the truth waited, and so did he. After Valerie's disappearance, police had found traces of the same anonymous coordinates on the USB drive. The digital trail led to a small abandoned house overlooking the sea, once owned by a private research foundation connected to Dr. Marcus Hale. Despite the danger, the twins went there themselves. They had nothing left to lose. The house was silent when they arrived, its windows boarded, the air thick with salt and decay. They stepped inside, flashlights slicing through the dark. Papers covered the floor, medical charts, old photographs, and hospital reports from the same year they were born. Then one twin gasped. On the wall hung a cracked photograph. 2 newborns wrapped in white blankets. On the back, written in neat handwriting, were the words "Anderson Twins. Successful transfer." Their hearts pounded. Suddenly, a voice came from behind them. "You were never supposed to find that." They spun around. Dr. Marcus Hale stood in the doorway, older but unmistakable, calm, cold, and unafraid. His face carried no guilt, only control. "You ruined everything," he said, stepping closer. "Decades of careful work, undone by curiosity." "Work?" one of the twins snapped. "You sold babies." He smirked. "No, I gave families what they couldn't have. I saved lives that would have been wasted in the system." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then one twin reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small recorder blinking red. "We're not here for revenge," she said quietly. "We're here for the truth." Hale's expression shifted. "You think anyone will believe you? The files are gone. Your lawyer's gone." He froze. From outside, the sound of sirens grew louder. Police lights flickered through the cracks of the boarded windows. The twins had already sent their location before they came. Realization flashed across Hale's face too late. He turned to run, but the twins blocked the doorway. "It's over," one whispered. Officers burst in moments later, weapons drawn. Hale was taken to the ground without a fight, his final words echoing through the house. "You think you know the truth, but you've only scratched the surface." When it was over, the twins stood together on the porch, watching as police cars disappeared down the coastal road. The wind carried away the sound of sirens, leaving only the crash of waves below. They should have felt relief, but instead, there was emptiness. The truth had come at a heavy price. Valerie was gone. Grace was never found. Their childhood had been built on lies. Yet, for the first time, they knew who they truly were. As dawn broke over the horizon, one twin whispered, "We didn't just uncover a crime. We uncovered our lives." The other nodded slowly. "And now," she said, "we decide what to do with them." If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.